Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Zac Streelman, CIO at Allegacy Federal Credit Union. Zac, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Before we get too far in, a quick words from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. You know, if a hacker's in your system, most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security. So companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx comes in. We've partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best price. So whether it's managed SIEM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll help you find the right solution at the right price. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Zac, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Allegacy and your role there as CIO?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Allegacy is a federal credit union. We were founded in the 60s as part of the RJR company. That's our roots. And today we are about a $2.5 billion institution located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and with several branches kind of stretching in various directions all across the state. So it's a great opportunity here for me to come in as a CIO. I'm the first CIO the organization has ever had, actually. And so I'm honored, I'm humbled to be here and really excited to get to work with a lot of really good people. So it's going to be a fun ride, and we're going to build some cool stuff.
That's really cool. So if I can ask, since you mentioned it, what kind of things do you have on the horizon?
I think, there's a wealth of opportunity. And, full disclosure, this is day 15 on the job for me. So I'm still very much in learning mode and absorption of what is in place, what technology exists, what the stack is, things like that. What I have been able to do so far is meet a lot of the people, and that has proven to be very, very rewarding. We got some great folks here, a lot of experience. But we got some big projects coming up. We've got several changes to our digital platforms. We've got a number of core system changes that are coming, and then quite a bit on the security roadmap as well. So there's a lot of things there. Right now, my job is to kind of herd all of the proverbial cats and figure out what happens when and by whom, and how we're going to put all of this stuff together. So a huge amount of opportunity and excitement to be here at Allegacy.
Yeah, I mean, pretty fascinating that they've gone 60 years without a CIO. I mean, I don't think CIOs were that kind of prevalent 60 years ago, but in the last 20 or 30, you would have thought that would have been kind of a thing. But is it because you think maybe it was more I mean, how do you get to that point? What do you think? How is it that you're the first?
Well, I think there's been a number of cases over the years. Most notably, I think there was a leadership team here that had been in place for a very long time, and they sort of had it handled. And then recently, within the last probably 15, 16 months or so, there's been a change in executive leadership. A new CEO came in, the previous one retired. And after 40 something years here at the Allegacy, so it was a lengthy tenure, and she built an incredible institution, and we have nothing but gratitude for her efforts. But I don't know that they ever really thought they needed a CIO before. They were always very successful doing what they had done. And Nathaniel, our new CEO, has a different vision. Because quite honestly, I think if we wanted to just stay the course, we probably didn't need a CIO. We probably could have gotten by with some other leadership, but leveraging technology as a strategic business arm requires that kind of vision, requires that kind of leadership. And so I think that's what opened up the opportunity for me. And I was very grateful to accept it.
That's great. Well, and you've got a lot of experience in the credit union space
Mhm.
as well. So actually, I think it's really fascinating that I don't think we've ever had two CIOs on the podcast on the show here that have had the same path, to the top. So I think we've had people come in as waiters into tech, and truck drivers. I don't think we've ever had the proverbial Uber hacker who started out,
Yeah.
hacking the Pentagon at 16 and is now CIO. But can you tell us your origin story, if you will, how you got into tech and
Oh boy.
security?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is a bit of a fun conversation. Um, I am, I think, on job number 14 in industry number 11 since I started my career in the mid 90s. Uh, I have worked, I started working like many of us do in tech. I started working a help desk job. And we were fixing computers. That was back in the day when you didn't just replace a desktop, you actually opened them up and replaced components. Uh, and we were building PCs, and I remember the Cyrix 6 i686 just came out, and like all of the bosses wanted that processor because it was so fast. And so we were putting those together because you could only buy those in home built kits. Like it was a wild time in the mid 90s, for sure. Corporate IT has come a long way. But that really just fostered an interest for me. Um, and I mean, I've been in computers and into technology since I was, 11, 12 years old. But yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do career wise. So I just started doing this job, and I found out that it was a lot of fun. So then I went to school and I picked up a couple of degrees and had a very varied journey along the way, right? I did insurance industry for a while, and then I did some software. My undergrad degree is actually in software engineering, so I was a software engineer for a while at a Fortune uh, 500 company. I started my career working for Unisys, actually, like way back in the day. Um, and and then I got caught up in the dot coms, and I think we all know how the that ended. Um, and so um, in in 2000, I was living a great life. I was a software engineer. I was a recent graduate. I had just gotten married. Like it was awesome, right? And then in 2001, I was laid off three times.
Oof.
So like it just really has um, it really has been a bit of a journey. I started working for a software company called eUniverse. I was working there as just kind of building various websites. That was back when the continuity marketing craze of the internet was hugely popular. They ran a site called Flogo. That was a gaming site. They ran a whole bunch of other things. And then they changed their name to MySpace. And that's kind of when everything took off. Um,
Uh,
and so I was on the very front end of that transition, but I ended up leaving the company because, well, for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one is that they wouldn't give me any stock options, and so I ended up in all like complete logical transition. I ended up teaching computer science at a private high school in Hollywood for 3 years. And so I did that for a while. Some wild encounters there. People that are now A-list celebrities were students of mine. So
no kidding. Can you say
it's just
who?
weird. I'd rather not.
Fair
One
enough.
of them, one of them is a very prominent Avenger, though.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, if anybody wants to go figure out who that might be, just doing some like math on ages and things, they can. But yeah, it was just a tremendously valuable experience. From there, I got tired of driving 40 miles through the middle of LA one way every day. So I took a job in a trucking company and was running logistics and trucking and inventory and pricing on the tech side for the whole company in three states. Um, that led me into my move up to Oregon, which is what led me into another software company That company ended up being a bit unstable at the top, so I took a job in manufacturing, and so I worked for a rifle scope manufacturer for 5 years, and then that led me into the opportunity in credit unions, and that's where I've been ever since. And so it's been a very incredible journey, and I've been really grateful for the experience I've gained along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that many different industries, you become kind of a bit of a tech consultant almost, right? Where you've got all this experience in these different industries that you
Hmm.
get to kind of bring into whatever the current industry is. Gives you a a perspective that someone who kind of came up in that industry might not have, because they're just like, well, this is how we've always done it. That's
Right,
fine.
which is
But in the rifle scoping industry, we do it this way, which is
yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, so there are some very interesting things that are true about technology, and one is that the skill set is very transferable, and I am evidence of that, right? I also have realized that the fundamentals of leadership are pretty much the same everywhere you go. Building a team requires the same thing if you're in banking or if you're in manufacturing or if you're in transportation. And there's a degree of consistency in that vein. And so, yeah, I started my first leadership role in IT was actually when I was back at the school. I was responsible for managing a bunch of summer interns. Like that was my first true IT management role, and then it just sort of took off from there. But the to be a CIO now, to have been a CTO previously, uh, I look back at my career, I'm just very, very grateful. I had some tremendous people around me who didn't have to mentor me, but did. People invested in me, people wanted me to get better, and my hope is that I can do the same for some of the folks around me throughout my career.
Well, I think that's one of the things that's so very important that often gets overlooked, and I gratitude, I think is highly undervalued, right? It's one of those things that everybody appreciates, being around somebody who appreciates the job that they've got. They appreciate life. It's so easy to take it all for granted and
Mhm.
just be pissed off because like whatever didn't work or some other problem or this or that or the other. But I think, when it comes to leadership, or even just and not even leadership, but just all aspects of work and life, it's one of those things that I think is core to everything. You name it, whether you're talking about leadership, love, any part of your life, that gratitude becomes kind of like
Mhm.
as we'd say in the army, a force multiplier. It makes it
Right.
exponentially better, right? If you don't appreciate it,
Yeah.
what good is it?
Yeah, absolutely. The some of the easiest words in the English language to say are thank you. And it's very hard to be upset with somebody who just said thank you,
Yeah.
right? Like it just is. And you have this this ability to genuinely convey appreciation to someone for what they just did, what they just said. Uh, that sticks with folks. Uh, I've been doing this a long time, and I've talked to people about their careers. I've talked to people about what do they want out of their role, what do they want out of their job, and everybody thinks that the most driving force is money, and it's just not. Right now, generally speaking, money's like number two or three on the list. So I don't want to like
Right.
fool anyone here. I've in all of my years of leadership and technology, I've yet to have someone tell me they'd like to make less money. So, um, that being said, though, what people really want is they want to be recognized. And especially in tech, like respect and knowledge is the currency of an IT department. Like that is what happens. And that is everybody has worked with somebody like that, right? They've somebody who, well, I don't know how to do this. Well, go ask Joe. Joe knows how to do everything, right? Like, and Joe is widely respected, and because he just knows his stuff, right? And that is so prevalent in the tech community because honestly, most of us are self-taught. Like most of us are like came up as keyboard jockeys and we're like, okay, let's go figure this out. And So the fact that you know how to do something and the fact that you're willing to share that with the people around you, it really does make a huge difference.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting one. It's funny because my wife, it's recognition and chocolate, and they
Mhm.
compete for number one, number two motivators for her. And I think Napoleon said that if he had enough ribbon, for like awards, he could rule the world. Because really, at the end, I think his point is that at the end of the day, people will do they just want to be recognized, right? People want to
Mhm.
be acknowledged for what they're doing and appreciated, and
Mhm.
it costs you nothing. I think that's the thing is it's so
Right.
inexpensive. It costs nothing to say thank you. It costs nothing to appreciate somebody's efforts. And yet so many people don't do it. To me, it's mind blowing. Was there a moment, or was it do you think it was it the .com experience that helped you to appreciate stuff? Or were you always just kind
Mm.
of, was that just kind of your personality? You've always had a reason to appreciate things.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. No, I had to learn some hard lessons along the way. The dot com failures were um, a wake up call, but they probably weren't enough to actually shake me. That being said, we were down to $3 in our checking account for 2 weeks. And so like there were some real interesting conversations about what was happening and what like the state of our house was going to be, our what our marriage was going to look like. But there were a lot of stresses during those days. But the thing that I think really shifted it for me was it was when I was working for the trucking company, and I had gotten to a point where I was literally holding a 700-person company on my shoulders, right? It was me and one other person. We were running all of the tech, all of the databases, storage, infrastructure, network, everything for 3 states. Um,
Wow.
and we had it dialed in. Um, and I let that make me really arrogant. Um, and I thought, there's nothing I can't do. And that company really started as, that was the 2008 to 2010 kind of time frame. They were very tied to the construction industry. Um, and we all know what happened during the Great Recession, right? So there were a lot of cuts that had to be made. I wasn't a cut, but I also wasn't advancing at all. And so, I thought that with my skills and my knowledge, I can go out and get a job anywhere. And so I went and I interviewed for this company. And I thought walking in there, like, I'm going to teach all of these people what's going on. And they sat me down and they said, we want you to do this test. And it was a tech screen. And I looked at this thing and I realized right in that moment that Socrates was right. The only true knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing. And I was humbled. Um, And from that moment, I recognized very, very starkly that there's just a tremendous amount of value in humility. Um, and yeah, that's one of my core values. And that's not to say that I'm self-deprecating or that I'm, disparaging myself or anything like that, but it is to say that humility prevents humiliation because I felt what humiliation feels like, and I don't want to feel that again. And so to answer your question, no, I haven't always been that way. I had to learn how to be that way, and it took a very stark reminder for me to learn that lesson.
Did it come from was it born out of the humility there? Is that what?
Um, I think so. It's one of those things that you just if you have enough self-awareness to take a step back and you go, okay, I just failed at something. And I didn't fail at something like barely missed the mark. Like I piloted the thing into the side of a mountain on fire. Like it was not a pretty sight. Um, and I knew it. And so it was a very very telling moment for me in my career to be able to step into a leadership role much, much differently. And I still made a couple of mistakes along the way, but I never made one again that was um, that was a result of me being prideful or arrogant or something like that, because that's just something I learned to watch for. Um, and I always go back to one of my favorite movies, The Matrix, and when Neo is talking to the Oracle, right? She points to the sign and it's above the door and it says "Know thyself" in Latin, and that that moment is like, for me, that's where I knew myself. It's like that I know my tendencies, and so I'm going to be on guard against that. And it just really has, I think, helped me lead well. It's helped me relate well. It's helped me build great teams. I've been very successful in my career, but none of it is by my own effort, or even mostly by my own effort. Like, it's because of the people around me, and I am incredibly grateful to all of them because I've had a lot of people help me get here.
That's fantastic. It was funny. When I was in the Army, I was in the 82nd Airborne Division, which was a very hard charging kind of infantry division. And
Mhm.
then I went back and I learned to the Defense Language Institute, where I learned Mandarin Chinese. And then they sent me to Tokyo, and now it's this very almost a corporate kind of environment of strategic intelligence. So totally different world. And I get there, and I'm this hard charging, kind of guy from the 82nd. And it was the whole thing was run by these manuals. It was from the DIA, and you read DIA's manuals. Great. You understand the whole thing, because we were
Mhm.
tactical and I moved to the strategic thing. There was no training, but we had this manual. Great. Read the manual. This was not rocket science. And much the same way. I was very kind of not necessarily arrogant in my abilities and everything, but it became very apparent that, well, I knew what was going on, and so they put me in charge of all the intel there. And what was funny is I wasn't very polite about, when these people who far outranked me were submitting their intel that was not up to par, right? And for whatever reason, I end up getting How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I got it on audio tape out of the Camp Zama library, and I'm listening to it, as I drive in the morning and doing stuff, and I think nothing of it. But all of a sudden, these things, it's kind of hitting home for me. Like,
Yeah.
these are great lessons. Oh, this all makes perfect sense. Thought nothing of it. You fast forward a couple of weeks, and everybody's going to my boss and being like, what happened with Connor? Did he have like a near death experience? Because now he's lovely to work with. He's no longer an asshole who's like pissing everybody off. And a lot of it were those same lessons, right? Being the humility, about being gracious with people, understanding where they're coming from. It takes nothing, right? Those things are so easy. It's just a little perspective shift, and it just does wonders. From that point on, it was, people enjoyed working with me, working for me. Prior to that, it was just that hellish kind of infantry division that was, it has its place, but its place
Mhm.
is not is one singular place. Everywhere
Right.
else, it doesn't translate so well. That's
Yeah. Yeah. The way that you have to adapt to your environment as a leader is like, I mean, there's way smarter people than me who have written a lot of books on that kind of subject, but it is a fascinating study because, like, I just finished a book. It's really well known. It's What Got You Here Won't Get You There, right? And I mean, it's kind of that, right? It's like, yeah, you might have achieved a certain amount, but if you just try and repeat that in a new place, it's not going to fly, right? Because they have a different culture. My old boss, when I was in Oregon, always talked about it like a treadmill. And it's one of the best analogies that I like because it's really easy for everyone to understand because A, everyone hates the treadmill, and B, it makes a lot of sense. And the way he described it is that every organization is on a treadmill and it's going at a certain speed. And your speed might be faster than their treadmill and it might be slower than their treadmill. But if you just jump on their treadmill and go at your speed, catastrophe is going to happen. You're either going to steamroll people because you're moving too fast, or they're going to step over you and you're going to cause a pileup of bodies somewhere. So he said, I want you to walk next to the treadmill. And like, I will never forget that advice because it was really like a sage moment for me. It's just like, oh, look at that. That's an easy way to understand what I should be doing right now. So that's actually very much the mode that I'm in here at Allegacy right now, is
Yeah.
very much walking next to the treadmill and learning the pace, learning the people, and learning the culture. Because, what is it Peter Drucker said? Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just so important. So I want to be a cultivator of that.
No, I love that. And you really can't undervalue culture. I mean, it really is just, the most important thing. So totally agree. So let me ask you, when it comes having been a software kind of developer, a programmer in your past, and it's funny because that's actually how I got into it, is into tech as well. And so I'm curious, do you do you look for that in other people when you're hiring them? Is that like a plus? Is it something that's kind of irrelevant, just a fun little thing that you happen to go through but wouldn't recommend it for others?
Mm, no, I would say I would recommend it, although I don't know that I would make it a criteria, right? Because I mean, one, when I was coming up, like the tech jobs were pretty generic, right? And you were in some places considered a wizard if you could troubleshoot a TCP connection, and like that was just wow, like you know how to make these things work. They're afraid of you, or whatever other nonsense people say, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know necessarily that I would look for that, because now the roles are so varied and so nuanced. Like, even if you look at a software developer, are you a full stack guy? Are you a front end guy? Are you a back end guy? Are you an API? Like,
Yeah.
there's so much there. So what I tend to look for in people is people who embody a value system that creates great teammates. And I have a framework that I use that I built called the Essentials. If anybody wants to go look me up on LinkedIn, I write about it often. But it's basically four principles that you have to have in order to be successful working for me, and it's really very simple. Because I talk about them all the time, and if you don't have them, you're going to get annoyed and probably leave. So, but the first is integrity, because um, who you are is what you do when no one's watching. And if you don't have integrity in technology, you're going to end up taking advantage of things. You're going to be granted access to information that nobody else has access to. You have to be able to act judiciously and with integrity in that role, because that's the only way that I can ever trust you. Um, and if I can't trust you, then we got nothing. So you got to have integrity. Um, the second is passion, uh, because anybody who is not passionate about IT and about tech in general is going to get burned out. It is going to feel like a grind. It is going to feel like a job, and it is never going to be anything more than that. I have a lot of people over my career who have, from other areas of the organization, wanted to get into technology, right? And I often say everybody wants to be in IT until they are, because people like the idea. It's a stable job. Everybody needs somebody in tech. Pays pretty well, and also you might be in a server room at 2 o'clock in the morning. Um, and so do you want that, right? Those of us that stayed, we're the ones who embrace that because we have a passion for it. And so you have to be passionate about what you do, because then that creates a genuine love, and then it becomes more than just a job. The third thing is ambition. Um, and ambition is not a title, and it's not a salary, and it's not a mark that you achieve. Ambition is a drive. It's a commitment to being better tomorrow than you are today. Um, that there's a hunger in that, right? And that's a huge part of being successful, is just being committed to your growth. Um, and The fourth one, which we've talked about already, is humility. And that C.S. Lewis said humility isn't thinking less of ourselves, it's thinking of ourselves less. And I tend to embody that vision for creating a team. So if I can find somebody who's got those four characteristics, I kind of don't care what their background is because I can teach them anything.
Yeah.
Um, and and if they're and so far the people that I have found that do embody those characteristics, um, I've never had a problem employee with them, not once. Um, and so that I'm not going to sit here and say my approach and my framework is foolproof because it's not, and I'm just as human as everybody else. But so far, it has worked.
Yeah.
So I'll just keep that going, I guess.
Well, let me ask you. So when you're looking to hire somebody, do you actually lay out the framework and ask
Mhm.
them? And do some people say like, you got no integrity? Like, how's that
Yeah,
like,
no.
right?
So nobody says that. So I ask questions that indicate it, right? So one of the I'll ask a two-part question. What's the most important thing to you? That's the first one. And then the second one is, what are you willing to compromise? Um, and nobody is expecting that question in a tech interview.
Mhm.
I've learned. And so, and maybe they will now because they'll hear this podcast and be like, "Oh, wait, I better prepare that."
That's a
But
good one.
I think if you can get a hint at what people are willing to compromise on, you can gauge what their integrity is, right? You can give them scenarios to talk about their passion. And the ones that I find that are really passionate, they'll come in and I'll ask them like, what have you set up like in your spare time? Like what tech are you playing with right now? And I've seen people's eyes light up and talk about their home lab. And I've seen people say, well, I just kind of turn on my PlayStation at night. And it's like, well, okay, I understand where there's differences in passion and that's a spectrum, not an absolute, but like if your idea of being in tech is just being a gamer at night and doing a job during the day, you might last a while. You might be really good at a help desk job, but that's all you're going to do, right? Um, and then ambition is talking about people's growth, right? I give them a question. You can pick one of the following four categories to focus on. What do you pick? Money, influence, relationships, or growth? You can only pick one. Most people pick relationships because they think that's the thing that is the most important to them. But it's actually growth because growth is the only one of those that leads to the other three.
Yep.
Um, and then, and then I'll ask them like, talk to me about a time when uh, you when you failed at work, right? Talk to me about a project that wasn't successful. How did you handle what your boss said to you? Like, what did you do in that scenario? And the ones that are humble, they'll say, well, I made a mistake. I learned from it, but I made a mistake, right? And so nobody's ever going to come out and flat out say, yes, I'm a person of no integrity whatsoever. You should hire me. But but you can get an idea of where people's head and heart is at by asking some of those leading questions.
I love that. That's great. So let's shift gears a little bit here because
Sure.
I think uh, everybody is obviously kind of talking about AI, and it's always an interesting topic.
Hmm.
So for you, and let's go specifically for the Federal Credit Union space. Where do you see AI playing a role? At for a legacy or just credit unions in general?
Yeah, I think there's really two variants of that. One is the tactical, right? The everyday use of AI, and I see it being leveraged from everything from marketing copy to process automation to code generation. Like looking at what Cursor has done over the last year is just like ridiculous. That's insane what they've done. I've got a couple other friends who are working in a similar space, and it's just like what is happening in the software engineering world that where I started now, it's wild. And I'm not I'm not sure this is a prediction necessarily, but I have a belief that in 15 years, we won't be hiring software engineers. We'll be hiring prompt engineers, but we won't be hiring software engineers.
Yeah.
Um, and to that extent, you still have to have people who know how it all works and validate it. Like I don't know that we're ever going to get to a point where we want the robots writing the code for us, but like we're already seeing better quality faster just with the basic functions of ChatGPT and Claude than we are what a human can generate. Rapid application development used to mean we could turn out some code in a week. Now it means we can turn out some code in a minute.
Yeah.
And that's just so I do see a huge leverage point there tactically. Strategically, I think that there's a couple of areas that people really need to focus on with AI. I generally say that AI requires three things to be successful. The first is a lot of computing power, and that's really easy, right? That's a provider's problem to solve, not ours. So we just got to pick a good provider and they'll provide the compute. The second is good data. And in the credit union world, that's a very daunting challenge because credit unions in general have largely considered data a byproduct of what they do, not a strategic asset, which means that there's not really been historically a focus on data integrity or data quality. And just like the old adage is always true, you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And so if your data is not good, what doesn't matter how complicated and how elegant your AI algorithms are, it's not gonna give you the results you want, right? So you've got to have good data and you got to have good data governance. And then the third thing is human capital, because while it's true that AI is a disruptive technology, excuse me, and all disruptive technologies create job flux. All innovation also, to quote Ben Horowitz, is inherently controversial because it's new and it changes things. And we all know how much people love change. Um, and so I really do believe that you need human capital to govern what your AI strategy is. Because if you don't, you end up with generative AI running away, and Air Canada ends up having to pay a customer a whole bunch of money because their bot promised him he could get a bereavement fare, right? Like there's a lot of casualties that are out there that if you don't do AI well and you don't put the right guardrails in place, that can be very, very damaging very quickly. And then I think kind of the third angle, which is a combination of strategy and tactics, is what in the heck do we do about the AI proliferation in cyber? Because like we're very quickly getting to a world where uh, cracking passwords is easy. Um, and the password itself is probably long overdue for replacement anyway, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But the the idea that AI deepfakes can fool biometrics, and the idea that a password is now, if you really want it to be secure from an AI cracker, it needs to be something like 68 characters long or something ridiculous, right? Like there's just a very um, real threat, I think, that exists, to say nothing of like AI proliferated botnets that can pop up randomly all over the world but still maintain connectivity and send packets. Like there's a lot out there that is I'm not a fear monger. Like that's just not me. Like I don't really believe that, um but it's something to be aware of, right?
Absolutely.
I don't really believe in luck. Um, luck to me is preparation meeting opportunity. And if you want to be lucky, then you need to prepare. Because when the opportunity comes to defend, you better be ready and prepared to defend. That's how this has to work. Security has always been an arms race. And so there's always the bad guys doing something, and then the good guys respond and probably go a little bit farther, and then the bad guys have to figure out a new way around it. And so that's just how it works. And all AI has done is accelerate that, right? And fundamentally, that's not any different than any other technology. If you have a broken process and you put technology on top of it, you're just going to break the same stuff faster.
Right.
And if you have a great process and you put technology on top of it, you're going to be successful faster.
Absolutely.
Cyber is no different.
Nope. No,
So, I mean,
couldn't agree
that's
more.
kind of where I see it going. And really, credit unions, just like banks, are heavily regulated, right? We're examined for our cyber profile all the time. And I think it's only going to become more important that we have the right people and the right tools to manage that exposure as it becomes more and more prevalent with AI.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. I think you said it really well with it's an arms race, right? Always
Mhm.
has been, always will be. And this is just another, weapon
Yep.
in the race. So beautifully said. Zac, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Allegacy?
Absolutely. Check me out on LinkedIn. It's just Zac Streelman. It's pretty simple to find. I got a bunch of articles out there. I'm not really a social media guy other than LinkedIn, so that's kind of my spot where I go. Allegacy is growing. We're expanding, and you can check us out. We've got all the various social media pages out there. But if you are in the area and you're not a member, please become one. It would be awesome. We'd love to serve you. So thank you, Matthew, for having me on. I really do appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Pleasure. Thanks. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.